much more time? Stop me if you think it's...
No, just go.
We are one group. To the right of us are the Haredi groups, the very, what is the term they use now in the English press? There's a certain term they use, fervently Orthodox. It's a very interesting term. The fervently Orthodox. You call them Haredim, we call them fervently Orthodox. I think the reason they call them fervently Orthodox is because most readers cannot pronounce the Ch of Haredim. So there's the Haredim, there's the Modern Orthodox. To the left of us are the conservative and the Reform, and then secular Jews, and then the assimilated Jews. The outlook is not good at all. Not good at all. North American jury, between America, the United States and Canada, and here you have the sociologists here. I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm wrong because there may be a 2% difference or 3%, but about 53% intermarriage, which means the odds are against having your daughter or son marry a Jew. That's awful. It's awful. It means the end, for most of these people, the end of Jewish life. Another generation or two, and they're gone, because even the intermarried couples, if they don't convert, almost inevitably, their children do not identify as Jews, and even if they do convert, what kind of convert? It presents enormous problems for our future. About 20% or more, according to the statistics that I've heard, identify as Christians or Buddhists or other religions. I don't know what else it can be, but basically it means that a great part of American Jewry is disappearing. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's a worse fact to have to face. Most of American Jewry is disappearing. And one doesn't know whether it'll be a generation or 2 generations, maybe it'll drag out for 3, but a great, great part of our community is finished. At the same time that the Muslim population is increasing. Now our strength in America, our Jewish strength politically for Israel and for our own American Jewry, has been the result of, number one, not a massive population, it never was massive, but we had enough to make a difference. So we have senators, we have congressmen, we have philanthropists, industrialists, etc. This group, as it gets smaller, the Jewish group in general gets smaller, will have less clout. That's going to be not a good thing for our own future in America, and not going to be a good thing for the future of our Jews in Israel. America still counts, American Jewry counts. We have a great deal of influence in the White House and the Senate, but they're not doing it because they love us necessarily, although some now may. I don't know how long they're going to last in the White House, but they know it because we have strength, political clout. The less people we have, the less important people we produce, the less clout we will have, and the greater the difficulty for all of us. It's, what do we do? What's American Jewry been doing? Been doing everything one can in an emergency. You know, you run, you try to get Band-Aids. When someone has cancer, you put on a Band-Aid. The federations, the charities, the trips to Israel, summer camps, teaching Hebrew language, Holocaust studies, all of these are okay. But they're pittances compared to the problems that we face, which are overwhelming. So they're all nostrums. And I tell you, when I talk to friends overseas, even to Americans, and I hear all these things, they're putting so much money into some of these things. I say it's good, but you know, gentlemen, it's too late to lie. It's too late to lie. We are in desperate trouble. And we must realize that the only things that we have, there are 2 things I believe that are critical: Jewish education and family. And we are doing bad in both. In family, and we have a decreasing birth rate. The average Jew in America, I think, have 1 point, I'm not sure, any sociologists here, give me the exact figures? 1.6. And how many people are 0.6? But 1.6, 1.7, that means we don't reproduce and even to keep up our numbers. Most Orthodox Jews, I believe, have children probably 3.8, 4, 4.3, in that range. Charedim, go through the roof. They can have 6, 7, 8, 13, very large families. But it's no consolation, because that's families. When it comes to education, we have a very grave problem. We don't have government support for our day schools. Day schools are the only form of education which can make it. The old Hebrew schools and Sunday schools, you know what they used to call Sunday schools? Shunda schools, shame schools, because it was a bluff. Maybe they had nothing better, but they never tried. Day schools do work. By all means, they're not perfect. Then again, nothing in life is perfect. They do work. The majority do continue. But the high cost of Jewish life is dreadful. You know what it means for parents who make, let's say, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year, and they have 4 children to send to school, and it costs them about $20,000 for each child. And just take the simple arithmetic. It's impossible. And someone pointed out that, and it's true, that the high cost of Jewish education is the best contraceptive in the world, because parents don't want to have more. They want to have more children. They can't, because they'll not be able to support them with a proper kind of Jewish education. So we face a crisis both in the family area and in the education area. And that crisis, there are ways of looking at it and solving it, but we'll have to face a great deal of opposition both internally and externally. Now, what about the groups to the right of us, the Aguda, the Haredi groups? I think they're going to change. We want to talk about the future. That was my subject. I have to go to the past and the present first. About the future. The Haredi groups, I think, are going to change, whether they like it or not, and they don't like it. There's a great deal of power and commitment in the Haredi groups. Very powerful commitments. But they can't continue this way. They can't continue to send young men, all of them go to a kollel. Does not mean they're all great scholars. As any of us in the academy knows, not everyone that comes, not every student is a potential Einstein or Shakespeare, whatever you will. They're not all great students. The original kollel was meant for the outstanding students. Now it becomes an open enrollment. Everyone goes to a kollel. In Borough Park, everyone goes to a kollel. If he doesn't, he can't get a shidduch. He won't be able to find a marriage choice. So what happens? Everyone goes to the kollel. There's inevitable economic collapse. How a man makes a good living. He can afford to keep 3 sons, 4 sons, and 3 sons-in-law in business. But then what happens to the next generation? So a few of them succeed in business, but it cannot continue that way. So it's going to collapse. Furthermore, if you look at the Agudat Israel, Agudat Yisrael, which is the organized form of most of the Haredim, and their annual conventions, they don't realize it. They're against Torah Amada. They don't believe in getting a university education. But who do they highlight at these conventions? I don't think they realize what's going on. Academic lawyers, academic psychiatrists, they're the showpieces. Well, if those are the showpieces, it means that subconsciously they realize that this is the way they have to go, and they will. There are already beginnings of it, that they're beginning to take some social work courses or other things, and they will have to come along. It'll take time, but as I tell my people in Modern Orthodoxy, in another 50 years they will be us, and we are preparing the way for them. And that will be, I think, a major part of the Jewish community. I would have one suggestion for all people who are in the sociology of American Jewry. Keep an eye on Chabad, the Lubavitcher. They are slowly moving in, taking up the slack. Of all the Haredim, they are the closest to us, because they are equidistant from everybody else, I would say. And they're open to everybody too. They are open to everybody as long as they feel you will become a Chabadnik. But I must tell you, I have the greatest admiration for them. If you travel around the world, and when you come to a strange city, a foreign city, you want to go to a synagogue, you want to have kosher meal, you want a mikveh, whatever it is, any Jewish facilities, there's always a Beit Chabad, always a Lubavitcher school or a Lubavitcher rabbi. And I must tell you with the greatest admiration, they are totally devoted people. You know, my graduates, if I send them out, let's say, to Norfolk, Virginia, within 2 years they're back. Well, what goes next? When can I change and get a better pulpit? It's normal. That's the way of the world. With Lubavitcher, wherever they send you, you stay there. I asked one of them, well, how long are you going to be in this position? It was a favor from the shtetl, a far out place. He said, well, until the one who sent me it tells me to leave. Well, the one who sent him there is no longer here, at least some of the Baba should think. So it went a long time until they leave. As a result, they build up Jewish life in the most incredible places.
That's right.
They're young, they're vigorous, they're determined, and without almost any formal education, they manage to do a great many things. They're politically astute. Their rebbitzins, young rebbitzins, are almost all very pretty, very competent, very hospitable. They do great things. The trouble, of course, is, from my point of view, two things. Number one, well, let me say, the good thing about them is they're terrifically open. They'll take anyone, and they don't demand very much, just that you come and enjoy and talk about the Rebbe. My daughter, they always, when the Rebbe was alive, but those of them who think that he's no longer alive, when the Rebbe was alive, they always said the Rebbe Shlita. Shlita is the abbreviation of Shi and Lam Yud Tet Aleph, Misha Yechel, Olech Yamim Tovim Amen. So my younger daughter was about 10 years old. She turned to me and says, Daddy, she said, is the Lubavitcher rabbi's last name Shlita? But they are thoroughly devoted and not terribly educated. I mean, in Jewish matters. Their Talmudic education is way behind most yeshivas, certainly way behind ours. They do have a good training in the latest sikha that the Rebbe gave. I frequently hear sermons by droshes by Babasher rabbis when I'm traveling, and I'm amused. I admire the fact that they're persistent. I admire their persistence. I wish we would have that fantastic and maybe fanatic persistence, but they have it. But their knowledge of Jewish sources is lacking, and it doesn't bother them. They call them rabbis anyway. They're very devoted, of course, thoroughly observant, but they don't necessarily have a great learning. And then they take youngsters from high school. A little girl goes to high school, and then she comes out and goes to seminary for a year, and behold, she's a teacher, and in 3 years she's a principal. Now, it's a wacky system, and very often it does not work. But that's what they do. So there are two problems that I have with Chabad. Number one is they can go next to build a Chabad school or a shul next to an ongoing institution and suck out the richest ones and build their own at the expense of the other. I talked to a former Chabadnik from Manchester, a wonderful fellow who was no longer a Chabadnik, and I said, that's an imperialistic attitude. He said, no, it's Stalinistic. And he knows that's their background. But that's one problem. The other problem, of course, is this insanity of messianism. And it's another discussion. But I must tell you, they're all over town, all over the world. And they do a lot of good work, too. And therefore, if you want to know what the future holds and what the various movements hold, don't ignore Chabad. They have a key to something. And it's remarkable. I don't know how long a movement can continue on the investment of an original endowment of charisma. The Rebbe is gone. How long will the next generation after that, be able to draw upon that charisma to remain loyal to the teachings of Chabad? So, if you want to know about the future, I'm sure you can figure it out by yourselves. And so far as modern Orthodoxy is concerned, I think that if our leadership in the next generation will have guts and courage and willing to stand up for its own principles, I think we're going to be able to keep a balance, which is our greatest problem. How do you keep a balance between the inner world and the outer world? We are doing it now with more or less success. If it can be done in the future, I think we stand a chance. But the general outlook for American Jewry is not terribly good. And it should bother all of you, whether you are originally Americans or not. It's a grave source of concern. The Hashem Yirachem, may God help, because it's going to be a new world out there, one that is probably really unforeseeable, but one that should occupy our worries and our thoughts for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As usual, we will take questions. What's your name?
My name is Olga Baraket.
Good, so we start with you, and then afterwards, Zilitna.
I didn't come prepared with this question, but as I listen, I didn't come prepared with this question, but as I listen to you, and you mentioned Chabad, and the question of God, does it figure at Yeshiva University? In what sense? I mean, ultimately, Jews believe in God, but certainly among the moderns that I talk to and it is a kind of a slight embarrassment. And nobody at the dinner table will say to somebody, do you believe in God? And in what form, in what shape? So I'm curious because could that have something to do with the lessening of adherence to Judaism that you mentioned?
Well, in America we have a saying, in polite company you don't discuss religion or politics. That does not hold true for Israelis.
Yeah.
For Israelis, maybe about religion they don't talk too much about politics. It's the bread and butter. But of course we believe in God. I mean, although I'll tell you this, sometimes people say you believe in God and they really don't. And sometimes they'll say we don't believe in God, but they really do. So you never really know. But of course it's the center of Jewish religion.
Unmentioned, undiscussed, and it's a kind of a sure, like this oxygen you breathe. But it is not as involved. I mean, what keeps these young Chabadniks going is because there is some center that they focus on.
Okay.
Now, without God, everything falls apart, and there's no Jewish religion. I mean, there are some people who believe in a God. Oh, but that's ridiculous. But there's no. It has to be there. And the reason, however, is that we don't talk a great deal about God. I have found that people who talk a great deal about God don't always act in a godly manner. We emphasize the consequences of the belief in God. Halakha, musar, ethics, doing things. So we don't talk too much. When I discuss with my colleagues or students, we don't talk very much about God at all. But we talk about the consequences. How do you act, how do you live as an individual and as a community? That's ultimately more important than an abstract belief.
Thank you, Rabbi Lamm, for a marvelous address. I want to ask you something a little bit sensitive, and I'm asking you to possibly move into an area that we haven't discussed here. America is terribly important as far as Jewish life is concerned, but Israel is more important as far as the long-term future. The outline that you've given of American Jewry is very relevant, but how does that impact? And can you give us an insight as to what you see in relation to modern orthodoxy in our country, in Israel, particularly if you're talking about Torah Madar? I think if you get a convocation of rabbis here, you'll be lucky, never mind universities, be lucky to get them having gone through high school, many of them. The problem that we have here is there a parallel? I know that Rabbi Lamm is trying, but would you say that we're moving in a similar direction, or do you see hopes for moving in a similar direction? And where are the masses of rabbis that are needed going to come from? We can't just rely on Yeshiva University, and this part of the world ultimately is going to be the determining factor. And where do you see things happening from here?
I wish I could answer that question, Izzy. I really wish I could. I know that. It's a very serious problem. I'm terribly distressed. Let me formulate it so that it's respectable. I'm terribly distressed by the sometimes Neanderthal attitude, medieval attitude, superstitious attitude of some rabbis in Israel. I think that it's not Jewish. It's not my orthodoxy, not my Yiddishkeit. Do you have to have institutions that are Torah Mother types? You need it desperately. Otherwise, the gap between religious and secular will keep on growing and growing and growing, and we'll have two peoples occupying the same land. Let alone we'll have Palestinians and Israelis. You're going to have religious and secular, which would be a terrible tragedy. To bridge that gap, you have to have people on the secular side who are understanding and tolerant, and that doesn't always happen. You have to have people on the religious side who are understanding and tolerant. And that doesn't always happen. So as far as religious Jews are concerned, we have to make that effort to produce leadership which at least has the vocabulary to deal with the rest of the community. We don't have enough of it now. A little bit in Bar Ilan, you have Bet Morasha, you have some yeshivot, what do you call them yeshivot? Has the yeshivot, some of them, not all of them, that encourage a much more open and appropriate attitude and of involvement with the world, with the Jewish world, with the world. You have some, they have to be built up. They have to have a great deal more support. And the support has to come not only from Orthodox Jews. I think the secular side has to help, and it's through government, basically, has to help the religious side produce people who will be able to be partners in the dialogue, because for the good of the country. So let alone that the Orthodox have a great deal of obligation to work, to turn outward and be able to talk to others. The secular side, in turn, has to respond in other ways. In detail, I don't know. I'm not for me to talk about it, to tell Israelis how to do it would be not only fatuous but also chutzpahdik. So I can't comment on that. But you're right. We need it. We need it badly. We're trying to, we send. I must tell you, when I became president in '76, I looked around my alumni, rabbinic alumni, and I looked at the rabbinate in America. I say something is wrong here. We have certain age groups, about 10, 20 years, that I'm missing. We have young rabbis coming in, and the older rabbis. What happened to the group in the center? Where are the stars? They weren't there. And I made some comparative studies. They're in Israel. They came in Aliyah. So some of them who went into the rabbinate are doing very well. Some went into teaching where no one hears about them except the immediate school they're in. And the rest are in the country doing things that everyone does, the various professions, the various businesses. But you need more of it. And it's got to be homegrown too. You cannot rely upon immigration coming from America, rabbis coming from America. You have to have your own people who will have the qualities that I mentioned before of Orthodox rabbis.
I have 3 more questions so far. Larry Pfeffer, then after that, Ambassador Yehuda Avner, Yosef Ben Arosh, Edward Cohen, and there was one hand up there. Mr. Milman, what's your name?
Yuval Barak.
Okay, good. Well, in the meantime, we'll take them 3 by 3. Well,
Do
okay.
take them 2 by 2.
2 by 2. Okay, Larry first, and then you.
Rabbi Lamm, how do you see modern orthodoxy engaging in a meaningful manner in the burning issues of today, such as global economic, ecological issues, trafficking in women, and other issues that the secular world is engaged in with the terror?
Well, let me answer